start streaming on there, and then they've changed it now, so I need to wait for YouTube to come up. Are we live? I think we are live. Technical issues, as always. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. This is your transfer show. It's that time of the year. We have a transfer banger tonight, and it can only be a transfer banger with these two wonderful people alongside me. James, you've been a very, very busy man over the past couple of days. I've seen on socials and YouTube. Are your eyes starting to go square yet, like mine?
Oh yeah. It is. I've never done as many chats and videos and things as I've done in the last couple of weeks, and yeah, it's starting to all blend together, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly is. Sam, I imagine yourself as well, working in paid media, our socials, regular live shows. You're starting to dream about players at this point.
Yeah, like I figured out. Apparently, it's not in Buemo, it's in Bumo. Apparently, that's how you pronounce it. I figured that out.
Somehow, I got on this train as an American who always pronounces everything wrong before, like everybody in the UK, because now everybody's starting to say, every time I come on a video, they're like, oh wait, it's Imbumo, and they've been saying it Imbuemo for such a long time. But someone corrected me like 2 months ago, and
Carl Anker, a friend of the channel and stuff, he corrected me on it, saying it's Imbumo. So there you go.
I heard him correct himself on the paddock earlier.
Oh, he did, yeah. So he corrected himself as well. Yeah. But yeah, so there you go. Like, I learned that today. And I'm probably going to learn. How do you pronounce? I say Gyokeres, but you say it a different way, don't you?
Gyokeres. And I'm about 99% sure Gyokeres is correct.
Okay, there we go then.
Yeah.
Well, this is turning into a literature lesson, or whatever you want to call it. But I say Embueno, so I'm not even close to any of it. I'm not saying Burmo, Embuemo.
That's a chocolate bar.
Yeah, my favourite chocolate bar, as it. So anyway, we're not discussing chocolate bars tonight. We are going to be discussing the topics on your screen. Gyokeres, or Gyokeres, however we say it. The truth to that. All the transfer latest with Mr. James Rhodes. We've got outgoings that we want to talk about, and INEOS have another reshuffle, with Jason Wilcox being a big part of that. So we'll definitely get into those kind of stories. If you are just joining us, please do hit that subscribe button, smash like in the video, and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss a single show. Right, Sam, do you want to kick us off with Gyokeres, please?
Absolutely. Gyokeres.
Yeah. We'll work it out by the end.
I'll call him Victor for now, and we'll just stick with that.
Just wait till we get closer, and then you really got to figure it out, okay?
Yeah. Victor's better. Victor's better, I think.
Lindelof's gone now. Lindelof's gone now, so we've only got one. We don't get a Victor, so we can go with that. You've been quite vocal on this guy over the last sort of couple of weeks. I've seen not many people pick it up, really. So I want to know, is there an actual possibility for this deal to happen? If so, why is no other club coming for him? And is it a case that United are going to have to sell in order to go and get him if they do want him?
Yeah, there is a case for sure that we can get him. There's a serious chance that we can get him. If we're still in the market for a number 9, which I think we are, though things get a little confusing once you start signing a whole bunch of forwards and where's Bruno play, and you can confuse yourself with a lot of questions, but we're still in the market for a 9. We've been in a market for a 9 all year. I don't think that signing of Brian Mbeumo is going to change that either, given where he plays best. But the options have gone down. The options have limited. The way that I always understood it was that Liam Delap was essentially I get he was the top target from a certain angle, but I always see things from a little bit of a different angle, probably because I hear things a little differently very often than what's out there. And what I'd always kind of maintained is that Liam Delap was the top target when you have to factor money into play, right? He wasn't the top target if you were to think about, if we could just go sign the best number 9, it's not Liam Delap, and it never was. No. It was probably Victor Osimhen. Go to a different Victor if we're talking about who's at the absolute top of all of the lists of who's the best 9 we could get if money was going to
say all Victors then, James. Who's the best Victor?
It's Victor all the way down, Yeah. No, but but the second to that, as I understand it, has always been Gyokeres, because Ruben Amorim's had a significant input on that. Obviously, he will as the manager, but the way that obviously the club operates these days, as opposed to in the past with the veto and with Ten Hag and with all of that, is it's a very much a club-led recruitment. So they said we would prefer to go for maybe a better value for option in Liam Delap. But with that moved away, or even I would say a bit before it, one of the things that I do understand is that Ruben Amorim, prior to like the Europa League, and you remember that week of like his meltdowns, like absolute chaos from him, like he was on the verge of you know, who knows what, right? And then what followed, he kind of calmed down, and then you got the reports after the Europa League. He went out with them to that meeting in France, and it's very funny because that same meeting on that same date last year, they left Ten Hag at home and decided to sack him before messing it all up. But anyway, he obviously felt it was important to go express his thoughts at that meeting. He comes back, he kicks Garnacho out of the team the next day, and you know, things kind of kicked off from there. But he was really, that week, I can say in particular, he was really upset about everything. And I think that, I do know that at that point in time, he had a really kind of lay it all out discussion with them about his feelings on the squad and what they needed to do to fix it. And as it was understood by me from who I heard it from, he really did lay out like, let's not go for value for money. Let's get the best players that we can get, because the problem is worse than you think. Mm-hmm. And I know we need more money, and I know we need to do a lot. And that was part of giving Garnacho the boot. We're going to need that money to rebuild this team. I don't want to persist with it. I don't want to try it anymore. Let's just get him out of the squad. And if you do look at where we land today, we've got the money for Cunha. It's done. We have the money for Mbumo. It's happening, presumably. And if we sold Garnacho, well, there's your striker money right there coming through. So the plan was all laid out. But as I can gather it, he really did express that he would much prefer if we went for someone like Gyokeres right away, instead of just, you know, maybe not right away, I shouldn't say, because there's the order of how you're signing players, but that we go for a player like him and not get another young prospect and hope that they become the right guy and hope that they get there eventually. And Gyokeres himself loves Ruben Amorim, credits him a lot with it. You can go back to a quote in April that I think Fabrizio posted way back from his agent that said it'd be really difficult for him to stay with Amorim leaving, and that when he even joined Sporting in the first place, he had 8 different proposals and picked him because of Ruben Amorim. Well, you know, that's a little bit foretelling, isn't it? That maybe we're in a bit of the same situation where clubs are contacting him, and because that question, like, why is nobody in for him? Except they were, right? And so when you were getting for months, everybody's in for Viktor Gyokeres. He's the top of all their lists. Why is he not now the top of all their lists? Why is everybody going a bit cool on him? My perspective on it is that it may be a little bit of the opposite. That perhaps Viktor Gyokeres is a little bit cool on them. You know, that the response when you're contacting a player's agent, how are they responding? You know, how are they reacting to that? What are they saying to you when you're talking about, well, what do you think about a move to Arsenal? What do you think about a move to Chelsea? What do you think about a move to Liverpool? One of the things that also has been made clear is that he'd like to go back to England to play in the Premier League, because he's at Coventry before, of course, but he wants to play in the Premier League. So that cuts the options down. And then, you know, he's going to be the main man somewhere. So Chelsea trying to sign 6 different strikers at the same time is not really a good fit. And, you know, when you really logic it, it's not much of a surprise, because if you're looking at England, there's really only 3 or 4 clubs, maybe 3, in for a real striker this summer. Newcastle have it. Villa can't afford a player like him. City have a striker. So it's the other 3 Champions League clubs you'd be thinking about: Liverpool, Arsenal, and Chelsea. Arsenal were really, really in for him, but they're doing this weird thing that I think as United fans we can just sit back and let them make these mistakes of hiring sporting directors and then just doing whatever their manager wants anyway.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what's going on there with them pursuing Benjamin Šeško and saying, oh, we're just going to play Kai Havertz a bunch no matter who we sign. So, what is that? I think it's kind of funny, but it really narrows the options down.
Is Šeško an Arteta move then? Is that why?
Yeah, very much so. He's the guy he'd like, and if you think about him, if you look at how he plays a bit, it's the same like not really a striker type of thing. He plays a lot outside the box, a lot, of doing that. So it kind of falls into our lap, but at the same time, I think that Gyokeres himself, as I'd always heard, would be pretty keen on the move, and the ambition United are showing in the market, I think, has only made it feel more like a good move if he were to come to United, for him to rejoin up with Amorim. I know Amorim really, really would like to bring him in. So it's got all the makings of a deal, and I've tried to be careful beyond that, because I was talking about it yesterday, and I keep hearing, like, even other people outside the club, really great sources on this, saying things like they think he's just waiting for United, and that's it. He's just waiting for United to clear the decks, to make the space to sell players off, and then come in for him. We had contact. We had contact weeks ago. We've had regular contact for some time. So yeah, it's like it's got the makings of a transfer, but I don't like to get ahead of anything, because there's still a lot of things that have to happen for it to come through. But it has all the makings of a deal at this point.
What was being briefed, though, around the time when, say, a couple months ago, around January, February, a lot of the stuff was this guy wants Champions League football. He's heading in 26, 27, into the prime years of his career. And this was from well-sourced people, like very good journalists reporting this, right? So I had the mirrored theory of what you've just said there, James, of, maybe he's expected certain offers to come from Liverpool, Arsenal, and he's kind of realised they're going the Šeško direction. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with Liverpool, why they've not gone down that route. But I had the theory that, well, maybe he's like, well, not as many clubs have come in or offered, and United are still there, and I can go there. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's just how I felt at the time when I was reading certain things. What wages are we talking about here? Because that was one of the things I ironed out with Victor Osimhen, that we're not going to sign him because he's going to want a big pay packet, right? So is Gyokeres not going to want a similar thing? Because we know journalists nowadays, James, are starting to inflate wages, aren't they, with certain players? So what figures are we talking here?
Before you answer, James, can I also add on to that as well? Why is his price dropped when he's got a release clause? Why has that happened?
Yeah, so of course, good questions for sure. Well, and then look, one of the things about this whole they want Champions League thing that I always find kind of funny is it's the type of thing that's built up in the lead in towards summer every single year. And I'm not even saying from bad sources. They talk to him, and the players are like, "Oh yeah, Champions League. That's what I want. Top of the table." And then you get to summer, and it's like, reality strikes, right?
Yes.
Getting a move is not that easy. There's a lot of competition for players, there's also, in reverse, it's like employee-employer relationship, right? Like there's times where, as an employee, it's not an employee market for you either to sit there and say, I'll have my pick of the litter on who I want to get. And what are they going to pay me? And are they going to be able to strike a deal with my club? And all of the factors that go into making a transfer happen, right? Because there's so many parties. And I said this before, because for Bryan Mbeumo, it was a bit of the same. When I first got onto that a few weeks ago, he was like, Champions League. I want to get into Champions League. I do want to go to Champions League club. And Newcastle were ahead of the race. He turned, but he was like, he was looking at options. Arsenal approached him, but it was like, well, you're going to play behind Saka. So yeah, that's not a good move for me. All right, well, that's one option off the table. Then it's Newcastle, and it's like, one of the things that helped us a lot there, not the 250,000 wages that aren't real, was the fact that Newcastle were really hesitant to pay 60 million for a player. And I've explained this before, but like, you can see all the piss boiling everywhere about United being able to spend money when other people can't, right? And not understanding the finances of it. The problem Newcastle have is if they go into the market and they buy, because they got Champions League now, 2 players for 60 million, and then next year they don't make Champions League, they're screwed. They're going to be like Aston Villa, where now they're going to have to be selling the whole team apart because they just don't have the revenues. we can go spend 120 million, not get Europe, and we'll spend another 120 million, and we'll spend another 120, and we can just keep doing it because United have the revenues to support it, right? So people don't like that, but that was one of the things that I heard in the lead up to starting to hear that it was moving. So that's the other factors is players look at that and then they go, you know what? I'm at Brentford. I don't have to have Champions League this year. I'm going to go to United. We'll get back into Champions League. They're willing to make a deal for me. They want me. There's a spot for me. This is a good deal. And it's United. It's not like it's like some bum, we're not dropping down a level. It's not a sideways move. I'm going to the biggest club in England. And it's the same thing for someone like Gyokeres, very likely in that situation. It's like, well, what are my alternatives? Compete with 3 other strikers at Chelsea. Is that worth Champions League? And it's 1 season. It's not a guaranteed, long-term thing there. What is the reality here? Is it worth being, Kai Havertz's backup? Well, we'll see. I don't know. Guess we'll find out about that if Arsenal change their mind and decide to go for him. So I think the Champions League thing is not that big of a deal when it comes to reality. Once summer hits, every time, suddenly the players are more flexible, especially when it comes to big clubs. I think it helps clubs like Newcastle to attract some players, but not when they run up against clubs like United. I think it helps them against similar level of clubs. Like you're going to pick Newcastle over Aston Villa right now, because of Champions League is a factor. So that answer there. In terms of wages, he'll probably be on decent wages because he is a very well-established senior forward who is and has scored in Champions League despite us not being into it. So he has been at a higher level than Cunha and Mbeumo in recent times. I would expect him to come in the 200 to 250 bracket, but that's you're talking about one of the top number 9s in the world. That's okay. That becomes acceptable for a player of that profile. And it wouldn't just be for the wages either, right? And the question on why the price, well, I think in that sense, it's just an agreement that's often had. A lot of the Portuguese clubs have this. They've got these higher release clause, but the players always have an agreement. If they've been there a few years and if they're a significant, player, that they could go for less. And the main reason for that is they can't really afford to hold on to these guys and not sell them. So they don't want to, they have to be able to keep getting players who believe that they can get a move and it won't be too hard later on to get that move if they want it. That's part of their whole financial model because they're reliant on these player sales to live. So they have to be able to attract good talent that they can flip.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You've just touched on Gyokeres. Cunha's done. Mbeumo's on the way. Who else are United looking at? Because Laurie Whitwell's mentioned an athletic number 8 being looked at, but I've not seen any names linked. We've seen Emi Martinez chucked about. I don't know how true that is. Sounds a bit suspicious to me. But who are United looking at beyond the sort of people we've just sort of spoke on?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it is gray. I mean, it's really gray. Beyond that, for me as well. I'm surprised at just how gray it is, but I think what that tells you is that they probably haven't actually done much by way of contacting other players in those positions as of yet. What's that?
Would that not worry you?
Well, maybe, except look, the assessment at the end of the season was that, United, the biggest problem by far was goals, right? Like the reason we're so shit is because we can't score goals. And that is the priority 1, 2, and 3. Because when you look at it, like, yeah, there's other problems in the team, but you don't finish 15th or 16th like we did in the situation we are in for any other reason except we couldn't score. So many games we just can't score, and we could have played, 2 games and we probably wouldn't have scored in many instances. And so that's where the focus has been and the money has been. And beyond that, it is a little trickier. I will say that in goalkeeper, there's been a lot of looks at players. They've looked at, Vanya Milinkovic-Savic. They've looked at Lamens. They've looked at Jean Garcia, though he's not coming, right? We've looked at a few. We looked at James Trafford, who's going to Newcastle. We've looked at a lot of players there, and I'd still suspect we will make a move before the end of the window for something in the goalkeeper department. In the midfield, though, I was giving this a long think about this because I was trying to understand, because people always use different words and things. Like someone says an athletic 8, you think, what are you actually talking about? Like, what do you mean by that, right? How do you consider the midfield? And I was thinking about the information that I'd heard and had. And one of the complaints that I know was that, you know, there's been a lot of obviously mixed opinions on Ugarte this season and his performances, but one of the things that is true is there's nobody even of a similar profile to him at the club, right? You go from Ugarte, you go to Casemiro, you're completely different players at that point, right? In terms of ground coverage, legs, we know Casemiro struggles to keep up at the pace of the Premier League, on his own, and you have this kind of issue. And one of the big complaints was there's nobody else who could do like high energy pressing, tackling all over the pitch type of thing. If Ugarte's tired or having a shit game, or you want to rotate, you know what I mean, to help players get into form, which is a problem across the club, but also a problem there too. So I think that when you're thinking about that position, think somewhat similar to Ugarte in a profile in terms of what they're looking for: someone to win the ball, and someone who can run around a lot, and someone who can cover next to Bruno, not behind Bruno, because Bruno will probably be in the midfield, right? Mm-hmm. So the closest thing we've had to names on that, like we heard Ederson at one point, but he's looking like he'll head off to Saudi, right, as the guy that they'll buy instead of Bruno. And the only other name that has even come up through the year from an even half decent reporter was Anton Stack, the German midfielder, and he's good and he fits that. And I think that kind of tells you that was what they were looking at, like a big, energetic, ball-winning, physical player who can cover ground. We need more of that in the team. So I don't know really. I'm looking at the names that I've had from the past of them been scouting or that might be available. I think a kid like Ugo Chukwu, who's Chelsea player who was at Southampton, fits really well into this, and they have looked at him in the past. So maybe he'll come up again in the future now, because he is kind of what they want in that respect. But I truly don't know in that position if they'll even get to it, because I also suspect we're going to need a Casemiro departure to do it. So I'm not sure where that goes.
I think it's all good getting and like an Ugarte like for like, but for me, and I've said this for quite a while now, I don't think he's nowhere near good enough on the ball to be in the midfield. And like, I get his abilities off the ball and everything he offers, and it can be really important. We saw that at Anfield and other big games. But you have players in the Premier League now, like you could say those are McAllisters, or who is as competent on the ball as anyone almost, but they also offer that work rate outside of it as well. So if they're going to go identify, I don't just want an athletic midfielder. They should someone who's really technically proficient as well on top of that. And I don't see any midfielders in Europe at the minute for a price that they're going to want who can fill that void. Unless we go get back to the Frankie de Jong days again. Yeah,
like in an ideal world, look, you could get something. But like when you really look at it, it's not as easy as it sounds, right? To find a player who covers ground, wins the ball at a high rate, duels like crazy, presses like crazy, and is really good on the ball. It's a challenge. I mean, because you're talking like I think like Carl Anka pointed out. What's that?
There are a couple, but it's going to cost you north of 9 million. So
because if I think about some of the players that are out there like that, like who makes sense to me, like all right, I could think about Tchouaméni at Madrid. Well, good luck, that's not going to happen.
Onana at Villa, I think he fit the bill.
Yeah, and they just bought him, and I don't think that will happen. Wharton, and even with Wharton, he's a bit slow in comparison to what you might want from some of the other players. Carl Anka mentioned it on the Paddock thing too, but like a young Declan Rice, that's right. Yeah. Good luck. Like these are hard players to find that unique kind of profile, because it's like you literally do ideally want like a Rodri, so you have to make sacrifices, right? You have to make some sacrifices, and I think part of Bruno playing deeper is a bit of that sacrifice, that you get someone who's so good on the ball in passing and progressing and moving it and doing all of that you can afford to have a little less, elsewhere in the team to do so, and especially if you really upgrade the attack as well. So I think they'll I think realistically, our best bet is a young player who maybe has the potential to be that guy, but isn't there yet. And that would be more affordable than trying to find someone who's already there. Because I just don't think it's even possible to find or come up with the money to get that guy who's ready for that position this summer.
Yeah,
perhaps Sekou Kone, who knows? Speaking of young players, because we've spoken about a lot of premium players, Gyökeres, etc. Are INEOS lining up any other INEOS style signings? You've seen Heaven, Chido, Diego Leon. Any other names that are floating about at the minute that you've seen, or are they keeping quiet on that as well?
Yeah, there's a couple. There's a couple on the youth side. I tend to avoid talking too much about young players because I think sometimes it's a bit, I don't know, something throws me a little bit about too many times kids between 14 and 16 ending up in the media. Feels a bit much to me. I'm like,
I know what you mean.
I don't even want to mention their names sometimes when that,
I've done extensive reresearch on a 14-year-old. Like, excuse me, mate. What are you saying?
It makes me a bit uncomfortable, so I try to avoid talking about the under 18 bracket of players. So there's a couple they are looking at in that bracket that are really good from other clubs to bring in, similarly to just poaching players. But I won't get into too many details on it. That they're still years away too, and that's part of the important part too. Is even if they get them, they're not going to be in the first team next season. And they don't need that pressure of being like put on this pedestal of like that's the guy. Chido is a really special case in terms of how good he is and how fucking huge he is, in terms of being able to even get anywhere near the first team. But there's similar age players to that out there. But they are for sure, I would say, looking to bring in at least two more in like the, more like the Kone bracket. They're going to be 18, 19 years old, come in. I don't have the particular names off the top of my head, but I do know there's a couple, and I would expect at least one of those to be another midfielder as well.
Do you know anybody from the academy who's been looked at as like potential to step up next year? Like who INEOS think, this guy's ready? Obviously, Hayden Heavens stepped in and he's looked fantastic. Chido's had a debut. Fredrickson out of nowhere, really impressive. Is there anybody else they're looking at and going, he's ready. He's the next one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Amos is going to continue to try to fight for his place in there, and we'll see where that goes in the season. And the couple other names. I mean, the one other name that I was regularly told, because Kone, we've heard he's probably going on loan, right? But the one other name I was regularly told, which it was a bit unfortunate he didn't make the trip out, which I think is due to injuries, is still Bendito Mantato, because he is viewed as that good, in terms of the level of player that they want, and he's flexible, left-footed, right, which is something Amram really likes and has been trying to solve, is the lack of left-footed players in the team. So he's like his prototypical right wing back, but he could also play as a left back too, left wing back especially. In a similar way, he is an attack-minded player, very explosive, similar to Giovanni Quenda, similar in a bit to Ahmad. I'm hoping we see him on the U.S. tour because he was supposed to be involved a bit, but has had a couple little issues. So hopefully we see him on the U.S. tour, and he does a decent job. He should be around next year rather.
Interesting. We just talked about who's coming in the door. What about out the door? There's lots of sort of stuff. Anthony, Rashford, Sancho, Malacia.
Get your fucking list out.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ. What's happening with these guys? Like, is there any movement on those? And then is there any potential surprise exits? Onana, maybe, Højlund, any of that stuff?
Right. Yeah, well, I'll start with Anthony because I said a couple of days ago that Batiste were coming back in for a move, as far as I know, to keep pushing on that.
Money-wise?
Well,
like what?
Yeah, well, so as you can kind of see today, they're actually in the midst of selling Johnny Cardoso to Atletico Madrid for 30-40 million euros.
Yes.
They're going to have a little bit of money here. I still think they're going to want to kind of structure their deal a bit on this. They might offer us a loan with an obligation that's a little lower so they can pay it later. That might actually work for us depending on the cost. But yeah, and obviously, I think there's a flexibility if Anthony wants to go there in terms of making the contract easier, that kind of stuff too. Though I think they can pay decent wages. Some of those some of those clubs can pay in Spain have this odd thing, right, where they pay decent wages as well, but they generally don't spend a lot on fees. But that's one. I see reports today that they're starting talks up. So I spoke on that a couple of days ago. So it's good to see that. There's some reports from Spain now saying that they are restarting those talks up to see what they can do. I think that's good because there's other clubs interested, obviously potentially Leverkusen with Ten Hag and all of that, but it's like a bird in the hand, right? Like if we have a potentially acceptable offer, even if it's not the best offer from Betis that Anthony would take, then we have a route for him to go and we don't have to drag it out and we can get the wages off and potentially we can even get, save a bit on the squad cost and free up money for transfers if we can get that done quick. I've got honestly no idea with Malacia except that he's obviously not staying at United. Yeah. He's going to go somewhere. But we don't have to get virtually anything for him. No. Sancho, likewise, I have absolutely no clue what he's going to do now because he has made the worst decisions possible for his career that I've ever seen. Like, it is unbelievable. The fact that he's leaving Chelsea simply because they couldn't agree to a wage deal, like I'd be surprised if anybody offers him anywhere close to that, like anywhere else. So who's going to buy him now? Because now everybody knows the problem wasn't United, it's him. Yeah. You could have cast doubt on that before. Now everybody knows.
There's years worth of evidence with him. Every club he's been to, there's been a problem.
Yep. Yep.
Honestly.
Yeah, it's like you step in shit and the shit follows you around. Well, you can no longer blame it on anybody else. It's there. And so that's the problem there. Rashford, I think, will end up at Barcelona, and I really do. They've been rebuffed, which helps us on Diaz.
Sorry to put you in, James. Can I ask? With the Barcelona situation, right? I don't know if Hansi Flick is aware. He has Lamal, he has Rafinha. Lewandowski's still bagging 25, 30 goals. Why on earth did he need Marcus Rashford?
Well, I think in terms of Rashford's been really liked at Barcelona for some time. Yeah. The people involved there, because they tried to get him a few years ago as well. They really like him over there. I mean, he put in some nice performances in Barcelona for us, so that might be something. I think the fans think pretty highly of him. I think their game maybe suits him. I know they've got their starting guys sorted out, but beyond that, it gets a little bit dry. And the fact that he's versatile. It's not that I would say that it's more normal, I think, in England, right, to have these wingers who are versatile than it is in Spain. Like you're never playing Yamal down the middle, right? You're never playing because they're so slight, right? And they're built very different. But Rashford, you could put him in any of the three positions really, and he'd probably be, productive. You could play him as a 9 in Spain. I'm sure you can, and you could play him as
unless you're Valverde. Because Valverde will just play in any position you put him in, which is
exactly. So beyond that, so I think that appeals to them. And then there's the name aspect where, despite some of the troubles here, I mean, Rashford's still a big name in Europe. He's still a name among a lot of players, and I think that clubs like Barcelona still kind of value that to a degree, getting somebody that would be exciting and. And I would guess that they also think they could just kind of get him going in more of a settled elite environment that they've got there. But look, they like Diaz, but we heard from Ornstein this morning that they've said absolutely no chance are you getting Diaz from us. So that just leaves Rashford. That should strengthen our hand in these negotiations to get something done there too.
Good stuff. I wanted to ask, whilst we're on we've talked about I don't know if people will call it not the fun stuff, but the transfers are what everyone looks at as the nice, fun, happy, can't wait to see what happens. I want to ask you about PSR situation. We had a report from The Athletic today showing that we are shooting in the green, as some people call it. I think it was due to a cash injection from INEOS. Can you just break this down for simpletons like myself? How it's all working and what's the crack is with that basically.
Yeah, I'll try to make it very, very simple. So it basically PSR is saying over a 3-year period you can only lose X amount of dollars, right? Over 3 years.
Yeah.
If the owner puts no money in, that limit is really low, 15 million. And the point is pretty simple. If your owner is not willing to invest in the club, you can't really lose any money, because otherwise, where's that money? The club becomes non-viable right away. I mean, I have to bear in mind, even as in a simple terms, the whole point of PSR is called profit and sustainability rules. The whole concept is we don't want clubs going under, right? Because we saw, smaller clubs down the pyramid get in trouble where they go spend all this money and suddenly they don't have the money to pay their players, right? And so how does that happen? Well, if you're losing money, and there's no owner investment, where's the money come from? Something's going to stop getting paid. You're out of money, something's going to happen, or you're going to start loading debt on, which was allowed when United was bought, but is not allowed really anymore in the same way. So that's the intention of the rule. So you can only lose a certain amount, but if the owner puts their money in, that limit raises from 15 million to 105 million. So you can lose up to 105 million if your owner is putting in at least 90 million into the club. So Jim Ratcliffe put 240 million pounds, something like that, right? Much more above the maximum, way more than the maximum allowable. So no more money. I like to make this point really, really clear. There's no more amount of money that can be put in that will improve our PSR position right now directly. It just, nothing happens with that. You put more money in, it just doesn't change it. It doesn't raise the limit anymore. The limit's the limit. Paying off transfers doesn't change it, because the transfers are already put over a period of time that have nothing to do with how you pay the transfer. They're always spread out anyway. So point being, we've been losing a hell of a lot of money. There are things you get to deduct from that. When you have expenses for the academy, when you have expenses for the women's team, those don't count against you. You still lose the money in the real world, right? Like you still lost 80 million pounds that season, but if 40 of it was for youth and women's team, you get to write that off just for PSR. You don't get the money back, obviously. It just means that you don't count it. So United have created enough room where they could lose money this season, basically. They could lose, I think the math was there, like 140 million. I don't actually think it's quite that high. I think it's a bit lower. But you have to bear in mind, while that sounds like a lot, United have been losing about that every single year. So it would look like things are grand, but they're not. We lost 130 million like 2 out of the last 4 seasons. So on that basis, we have no money. So how are we spending in the market? It's all these cuts and redundancies, right? The staff leaving, we're cutting the budget by about 80 million. That's the money we're getting to spend on transfers, is that basically. So in simple terms, we're okay because of all the cuts and things that have happened. Unfortunately, as much as nobody likes it, those are the reasons we have any money to spend in the market. Otherwise, we probably couldn't do anything. We'd be sell to buy from the start. So we're using up that space. Now, I would say there's a little bit of gaming going on here where we probably aren't maxed out on our budget if we really wanted to just go spend, but it would be semi-irresponsible to go and start spending without at least having sales and departures lined up.
Tell that to Ed Woodward and John Murphy.
Yeah, so because that's what we did before. Really then you're just borrowing from the future, even though you can get away with it.
Yeah.
Then you end up with a problem later. So they don't want to be irresponsible and put us back in a hole after digging us out and sacking a bunch of people to dig us out of that hole. They don't want to put us back in that position in the future again. And that's the main issue that we've got now.
Understand that, Nick, or are you still like me, just going, I don't fully understand finances?
Like bits, 75% of it, yeah. The other bits.
You know why it's tricky in a sense is that it's made up, right? PSR is bullshit. It's just made up. That's why it's hard to understand, because there's no real world comparison to it, because it's just rules. It's random regulations put in with calculations that nobody knows, and the math is put in and it's not public and it's not filed, and so we're really all guessing. On United's finances, you can look at it like a regular budget. United are spending more than they're making. And so they have to cut how much they're spending to bring it back in line, which is what they've done. Essentially, it's just a different rule within that rule of basic finance. But that's one of the reasons it's confusing, is because it's all made up. It's like, whose line is it anyway, right? It's like it's all made up and the points don't matter. But
love that show, by the way. One of my favorite shows ever. But let's not go down that road. More like Nick said, boring stuff. But to me, it's not boring. INEOS restructure. Athletic reported Dave Brailsford is taking a step back away from United. He's going back into INEOS Sport and stuff like that. We've seen Jason Wilcox promoted, and then Christopher Vell has had a permanent appointment. I think he's like director of recruitment. I believe that's his title. Obviously, we saw Dan Ashworth leave as well 3 months into his thing. We've seen a lot of changes. Like, is there reasons for why they keep changing things, keep moving people about? Is it for the better? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, in this case, I think this is only a positive, and not really necessarily for the reason that people might think. Like, people have made up, or I guess like invented a bit to fill the gaps, like a lot of stories about how things went and who was responsible for this and that and the other, right? The truth is, yes, look, when INEOS came in, it was a bit chaotic getting everything in place, right? I don't think things necessarily went smoothly. A big part of that is just the reality of dealing with the Glazers and trying to get it mid-season, and everything just kept dragging even to get the deal done in the first place. But it all kind of ties back to that, because Dan Ashworth was hired by Dave Brailsford largely.
Yeah.
Now, Omar Barada is the CEO. He's who should have hired the director of football, right? So then Omar gets in the building and he says, I don't like this guy, essentially, not really like that, right? But he says, this isn't my guy. Like, we don't share the same ideas. And I'm supposed to have a director that works in line with what my vision for the club as a CEO. Well, who was that guy? It was Jason Wilcox. That was his recommendation. So Jason Wilcox was in a lower role. Dan Ashworth is in a higher role, except Dan Ashworth was hired by somebody else, not by Omar. So then it was like, all right, well, I didn't like the things you were recommending. I don't like your decisions. We think you kind of don't fit with our vision. Let's get you out of here. Wilcox since then has essentially been doing the director of football role, even though only with this now present has he officially been promoted. I think what it signals today is that INEOS are done, right? Like the whole chaos that came with setting the club up with its structure that was never there before, right? That's the other part of it. It's non-existent, right? There was no football people before. It was just nonsense and, everybody there. So they're finished with their part of saying, as owners, we're stepping in. We're involving ourselves. We're doing the things we don't really want to do and probably shouldn't be involved in because we're not the football experts, but it's because nobody's been doing it. We've sacked off every executive in the building, quite literally, like everyone, replaced everybody, put the whole new thing in place. Now we're going to withdraw. Now we don't need to be involved anymore. We'll look at it from and just purely like we should. We're here to sign off on the money. We're here to, you keep us briefed on everything. And now it'll run like a normal business should, or like a normal football club should, where the owners are more silent, right? And the guys that they've appointed are running the show, and they're going to report back. And if the owners think things are going well, good. If they don't, then they'll tell them they got to change things, but they're not hands-on, like doing it themselves. The only thing the owners will really be heavily involved in now is things like the stadium project, infrastructure, things that are more business related. But it tells you the football itself we should actually be in for some continuity, less chaos. Ruben Amram commented on that too. He says, like, I know you can't see it, but behind the scenes, it's like all the changes, all the things that are happening, different people in charge of Carrington. That quote in particular sticks out to me because at one point, Brailsford was in charge of Carrington. Like, he was the guy at Carrington running the place because nobody else was. Well, now you have Wilcox, and now you've got these guys in place to do it. We should see calm and continuity moving forward. It's kind of like the whole place has been ripped to shreds, the replacements, the hirings, all of that. They put everything back. They hired the data people that they wanted. They put the structure in. Now they can step back, and it's all torn up. So in that respect, it's like kind of this is the way up here. We don't want INEOS involved in everything on a day-to-day basis. That's not really what you want from your football club because it's not a business. and they're not football people in a sense. You know what I mean? They're not the experts. You want the guys they hired to do the job without owners being, stepping in too much. So I take it as a good sign that we're done, with like this heavy transition period that we've been in for about 18 months now. And moving forward, it's like we're a normal football club that can just operate like it's supposed to, and that would be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, you've covered a wide range of stuff there with INEOS, so I mean, I had another question on it, but to be fair, you've covered the majority of it. I want to dive into some of the questions from the chat, because there's a few in there from Andy and Adam and My Damned and a few others. So let's just dive into them and we can finish the show with them. Adam's in the chat saying, James, do you think there's something in these Emi Martinez links? I just don't want to see the T-Rex in goals next season.
I think it's about like half. I think it's like half true, like United have.
If there's a coolometer, you're saying 5 out of 10, 4, 5 out of 10.
Maybe even a little lower, because they don't want to spend much on a keeper who's probably on decent wages and might be 30, 40 million. They don't want to spend a lot on a keeper. So the likelihood is really low in that respect. They have looked at Emi in the past, but especially for a keeper of his age, not that, keepers can last a while, so the age isn't a huge factor, but it's like they just don't want to go spend a bunch of money on a keeper this summer. We don't have the extra budget to go do 40 on a keeper on another 200,000 a week, unless Onana's sold, and the likelihood of that is just really low. It's going to be the backup keeper leaving, most likely, to get competition in the door.
He's a proper bellend as well, isn't he, Emi Martinez? Like proper.
Well, he could be our dickhead. You know what I mean? We can have him as a shit house.
Yeah.
Andy Williams saying, what's the expectation for next season if we get all our targets? Because I'm not here for 8th or 9th nonsense. I agree. With the names that have been mentioned, James, if we've got a team with Ahmad, Bruno, and Brumo, however you say it. I'm getting names mixed up here.
Yeah, we're going to struggle with this now.
Cunha, Gyokeres, I don't know how to pronounce it. Forget the pronunciations, but that group of players, you have to be aiming top 6, surely. Top 6, 8.
For sure. Absolutely. Look, if we get Gyokeres in, or an equivalent striker, not that I think there's much out there in the market, but if we were to do that now, even without signing anybody else, that team should be in the running for top 6. It needs to perform at that level, because, I mean, when you think about the numbers, it's almost insane. You've added, between 100? The three, if you add Gyokeres, you've added 100 goals.
Yep.
We scored 44 last season as a team.
Yeah.
So you have to be in that conversation. I mean, 20 more goals, 25 more goals probably puts us in the top 6 to 8, because we're just terrible at scoring, but it wasn't that bad otherwise. But like, we just could not score. So yeah, I agree. You go get a striker now. You should be in the top 6 to 8. I think we'll be better anyway. But yeah, I mean, you add midfielders on top of that. You probably sell and a goalkeeper. Then I would say you should be actually in competition for those Champions League spots again.
If you score goals, that Europa League, we win that. Because we could have played that Europa League for about 300 minutes and we ain't scoring. But if you
never
players in, we beat that Spurs team because they were terrible.
Oh yeah,
they were so poor.
Yeah.
So,
My Damned United, big up My Damned United, is Real Red Ultra, saying, question for James, how are the Glazers individually seen by United fans in the States? Are they hated and ridiculed as they are here?
I don't think it's nearly as understood in the States. Like, owners are different. I don't know. They're just different here. I don't think as many people know much about them.
Yeah.
In Tampa, because I lived there for a bit. It's very different. Like, obviously for the Buccaneers there that they own, not United. Like, nobody even knows they own a team across.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it's just a lot unknown, but it's also like, in addition to that, it's also like they actually invest in the city.
Did they build a stadium for the Buccaneers?
Yeah, and it's a little different here because a lot of it comes from tax dollars and such. But
okay.
But they do have like museums and foundations and all the things you would expect owners to do in a city where their name's on a bunch of shit. Got like the Glazers Children's Museum and the Glazers Aquarium and all these kinds of things, and it's like, oh, these are like the big benefactors of the city, But yeah, so they're viewed quite a bit differently in this respect.
I wouldn't be buying a Glazers aquarium anytime soon. I'll put that out there. McMillan, question. I don't get what this is. This is like a personal banter thing or whatever. Have you ironed your Man United flag yet?
You can see it.
I can't. Well, on my window, I can't see because it's the
I'm
graphic.
not going to iron the flag because I don't know what the material is because it's not a real flag. My wife's bought it for me and hung it up. And I keep saying if I iron that thing, it's going to catch fire and it's going to melt. And I do not want to apply any heat to this thing.
Okay. We don't want to be starting fires here.
You don't steam it like a steamer.
I do have a steamer and I'll try it, but I'm telling you, I feel when if you touch it, I swear, any heat, that thing's going, and that worries me a little bit.
I feel like people are just switched onto this now, and it's like them telecom things in 4 a.m. when they're trying to sell stuff. We're not trying to sell irons or steamers or anything. I'm sure the flag will be taken care of in due notice. Just the last couple of questions, and then we can head off. There was one question I've just seen there. Anonymous Mango, is Kobbie Mainoo the long-term Bruno replacement? I doubt he extends his contract when it expires in 2027. Just to add on to that, me and Sam was discussing this the other day. Should there be worry signs around Kobbie given the season he's just had?
I'm not really worried about it. I feel like we need to give people young players more time in that they don't have to be the guy. We've seen how it makes a mistake. You know, you've seen how the feeding into Garnacho's ego has resulted in what we're seeing at the moment. I think just even if we view Kobbie as a really, really top talent, and I do personally, it's okay for him to be a bit part player until he really finds a solid place in the team and also goes on a run without getting injured. I think it's okay. I think it's all right for him to work his way up to improve and to work with the club to improve into a position that works and into a place that can utilize his skill set best. And that might take time. And if it does, that's okay. I mean, I think it was Paul Scholes who like was in almost a similar thing, and you saw what kind of player he turned into, where he was, not played for a bit when he was younger, and there's been plenty of other examples of that. So I think it's all right, and I think that it's because in part we're so desperate, understandably, to see better players in the team and always the connection with the academy, that we rush it as fans a bit much. We all do. We all want them to go in and just be the guy right away. But so often it has the opposite effect on them, no matter how good they are. So I think it's okay. Look, some of it's going to come down to his side. Is he willing to, to do that? But I think he's got a much more level head, where just because he's on the bench, that doesn't mean he's looking for a route out like certain other people. So I think it'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, we have covered a wide range of things. Quite literally everything. Anything that's related to Manchester United has just been covered. Sam, go on. Why are you laughing?
Why? There's a bunch of questions about arses in the chat. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's something gone on with you.
James knows something here. What's going on?
What's going on, James?
That is definitely... So...
Go on.
I missed this.
If after this video, you go click onto yesterday's live and go to like the 4-minute mark and watch the intro, I put a little something that'll give you a little bit of an explanation there. But a couple of days ago on the live, I don't know how we ended up on it, because somebody had linked like an article about how players use their ass to play well.
It's Carl Anker's article, isn't it?
Well, there's I don't know where there was a whole video on it at one point from one of these guys. And the thing about it is, I'm usually like I really don't like a lot of over analysis, but I actually thought it was funny because this one I agree with in this respect, that like players in many sports use their ass, and it becomes like super notable that they use their ass as a huge part of their game to like, in basketball, you'll see it where they use it to post up, to push defenders off, things like that. And I just find it really funny. So we ended up in down a whole like,
don't say that. Don't say that when you talk about arses, James. down a hole.
What kind of hole?
We ended up down a whole thing talking about Mbumo and how big his ass was, and like, talking about about these players when they come through, like these smaller players with like Eden Hazard, Mbumo, that really know how to use their ass effectively. So it was a full 20-minute derailed discussion about it that just went completely off, but easily one of the I couldn't compose myself for a bit when we were doing it, when we were talking about it, and it was a good 20-minute segment on one of the lives the other day. So
well, you just give me an idea for it. We'll do a tier show, Sam, of arses, of like who's got the best yeah, that's what people come here for.
Yeah, we ended up going on a thing because Shreyas, who's an Indian lad who's on the channel, I think certain English words he doesn't know the proper use of them, and he called the player, he's a dominatrix in the box. And that derailed the show for about half hour.
Yeah,
and he had no idea what he said. He didn't understand what he said. Like, he had no idea what he said. Fucking hilarious.
He's such a polite kid as well, and when he said it, he was just like really serious. That's not the right word, mate. You can't be saying that. That's not the right word. But anyway, that's what you come here for, the detail and the comedy element. Absolutely love it. We have covered so much stuff, James. Let the people know, our community as well, because they are they love a good transfer story, and you at the moment are one of the purest sources for transfers. So let them know where you're at. What you're up to over the next couple of weeks, because it's going to be a little bit crazy in it with everything that's going on in football.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just be, I've been doing like 2-a-days during the week, video in the morning, live in the afternoon to discuss everything. And so I don't know if today I'll get to do a live, because I did a recording with somebody at 8 a.m. my time, and then I did a podcast at 10 a.m. and now I've done this at noon. So it's a lot. I'll probably make a video a little bit later this afternoon that you can get towards the evening UK time, like 9-10 o'clock probably, rather than a long live, because I've got to actually do a couple things. And then but then tomorrow back to the grind. I'll be live every day pretty much.
Yeah. Well, if he was doing rating who uses their arse best in streaming, it's probably yourself, given the details that you just exposed. So there we have it. There we have it. Gold standard from Mr. James Rhodes from the Muppetiers. Appreciate you very much. Again, people who are watching from our channel, from James' channel, whatever it is, subscribe to both, like the video, turn on the notification bells for when obviously the news drops, especially from James's side. And yeah, obviously at some point we'd love to get you on again during the summer, James.
Of course.
Awesome. Thank you to everyone. Sorry you couldn't get to all